It's good morning. Anne Dombroski, welcome to Yellow Shelf.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Your new book is out now. Congratulations. After the Great Storm. What do we, the Yellow Shelf audience, need to know about your book, Anne?
Well, it's After the Great Storm is a novel of intrigue. There are layers of mystery. It's set in the near future. It's Sydney, but not quite Sydney as we know it.
Yes.
And there are speculative elements. It's not sci-fi.
Yes.
And these elements, particularly around transport and medicine. And the novel follows Alice Kaczmarek, a 40-year-old biomedical engineer, her quest to obtain the release of her husband from prison. He's been given life sentence for orchestrating an accident on the brand new transport system. He claims to be innocent, but is he? Yeah. When she visits him in prison, there's a lot of surveillance, so any important matters, they communicate in code. The beginning of the novel is set against the backdrop of an extreme weather event, which is the Great Storm. And after this storm, a strange figure arrives at Alice's doorstep, actually crawls up her front steps. And reluctantly, Alice takes this figure in. And through the process of the novel, she uncovers the connection between this figure and her husband, and also finds out the truth of what's going on in the prison. She encounters lots of corruption, different levels of corruption in her efforts, even in her own workplace. And she's forced to borrow money from an underworld figure. She becomes aware that she's being watched, being followed. Her home is invaded. And overwhelmed by all this, she draws closer to her husband's close friend, Lowell, who becomes another important character in this. That's the central thread. I mean, there's another thread that she's 40 years old, biological clock ticking. And there's some urgency about this, that she'd like to have a baby. So that's another layer. Her husband's in prison, and so on. That's pretty well it. There are other threads.
And look, as an overview, it's great to see that this is described as a psychological novel, light and darkness, sadness and joy. So that feeling of mixed emotions all along the way,
yes,
through the novel. And could you tell us, this is your first novel? I'd love you to tell us what inspired you to write. Tell us about your background and anything we need to know about Anne.
Well, what inspired me was, looking into the future, thinking about a possible grandchild, what it might be like for her. So I set it 50 years hence, the date is actually embedded. The actual date is embedded in the first couple of chapters. You learn, when it is. I was just thinking how things were going to go, what life would be like. And I've seen rapid changes in Sydney just in my decades here. And so I guess that was the real thing. I started with this idea of a woman in trouble, and I wasn't really sure what her trouble was. That eventually became the husband in prison. And I also knew she was going to get help from a stranger. At first, I had this idea of a guardian angel, and I researched about angels. I mean, it's an interesting, I like the idea of angels, the wings and those statues in cemeteries and stuff. But I couldn't believe in this angel, I just, it was beyond me. So the wings ended up staying, and what I ended up with was a very terrestrial angel, and that's the strange figure that appears. Also, I'd been through the IVF journey myself, so that was very much reflected in the book. Late motherhood, Yeah, I guess I also, I teach English as a foreign language. I also am a teacher trainer, but one of my students mentioned in class that in his country, you can pay the surgeon an amount of money before the surgery, beyond the fee, to ensure that the surgery goes well.
Wow.
Yeah, and that really rocked me. I thought that this is really corrupt. Some other students in the class said, "Oh no, not in my city, not in my." But these two students were adamant that it went on, and I could imagine that was a plausible thing. And another student, I had a PhD student, was developing a new test for cystic fibrosis to use with children, less invasive, less worrying for the child. And reading about cystic fibrosis, that solved one of the problems that I had in the novel too. At that time, I thought, yes, cystic fibrosis, that's part of her journey. So all of these things just fed in as I was writing. I didn't start with a plot.
Yes.
And I worked really I just followed the novel. I just followed the character in the novel and just saw where she went. I only knew as much as she did.
Yes.
I didn't know how the stranger was going to play out. I didn't know a lot of the people that she meets. I'm not sure how they're going to work.
Yeah.
But I guess on some level it was the subconscious working it out, because it all came together in the end. It was nice that it did. I was really writing blind in a way.
Yes.
But that was kind of nice. I don't think I could sit down and just plot, because then I'd just be filling in the dots,
Yeah.
It was a more following the character.
Yes.
Following steps. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's great that you share about your, intertwining parts of your own life and your own career, and then just the journey of, writing the novel. And if we're watching and we're curious, wherever we are around the world, what's the best way? Look, I know the book's on Amazon, and I can put a link to your publisher. The book's out now, isn't it? So people can just...
Yeah, it's in most of the bookshops now, most good bookshops, including independents. And it's also available on Amazon for overseas readers.
Yeah.
Or available through, as you said, through the Pencil Lounge, the publisher.
Yeah, look, I'll put those links in the show notes to make it easy for anyone who's interested. Go and have a look and to purchase the book. And thank you for joining us. And I'm going to ask a last cheeky question about being a first-time author. Will you do this again? Will you enjoy the journey of the launch and the next few months, or have you already got another book in mind?
Look, I'm writing another book. Yeah, I mean, in the process of getting it published, you've got a lot of time actually.
Sure.
So, I'm well into another book.
Well,
and I've got a couple of ideas for others too.
Good on you. Well, and I guess the reason I ask is because when your novels are out, the future novels are out, I would love to have you back to share those.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and all the best. And thank you for sharing today with Yellow Shelf.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Cheers.